All right. Okay. We'll go ahead and get started. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get to the official program. Out of respect for our speakers, we don't allow any photo or video captures, right? But do know that this will be recorded and available after. So don't worry about that. Again, this is just a kind of disclaimer that we need to make sure we have everybody's permission before, getting any of their content, okay? We're happy to answer any questions that are entered in the Q&A. We'll keep this very informal. So I'd just like to welcome you. I don't know, Jake, if you want to put the welcome screen back up. I want to welcome everybody to our first Engaging Your Tech Transfer Office. It's research, translating research into patents. This is our APS first kind of coffee chat in this area. So with that, sorry, thanks, Jake. Again, for those of you just joining, you have joined our Engaging Your Technology Transfer Office to translate research into patents. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of being joined with two really, really intelligent and brilliant women that will help us get the basics of, everything from patents to, how their importance is in academia. And so I'll just do a brief introduction for myself, and then we'll introduce our speakers. So I'm Dr. Michelle King. I'm the current chair for the Physiologist and Industry Committee. I'm a principal scientist at the Gatorade Sports Science Institute. And I'm joined today by Dr. Tariana Stewart, as well as Dr. Carolyn Yago. If you ladies want to introduce yourselves, that'd be great. We also have Dr. BK Kishore on the line, part of the Physiologist and Industry Committee, to help guide the discussion. Dr. Stewart, you want to go ahead?
Hi, I'm Toriana. So I found technology transfer by accident, which is like most people that enter into this career. So I started off as working for a couple of law firms, IP law firms, drafting patent applications. And then quickly realized that law firm life is not for me. And then I had a good friend that was leaving Georgia Tech transfer office to go to Emory. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to explore this technology transfer opportunity. So I was at Georgia Tech for a while, licensing. I had about 500 cases that I was managing at Georgia Tech, and basically reviewing invention disclosures to filing patents for the inventors and then trying to commercialize the technology. And then I left Georgia Tech to work for IBM Research, where I was in the AI group. And so I was commercializing AI technology and a little bit of quantum technology from IBM Research. I was in industry and realized I really want to go back to academia. And at the same time, NYU came knocking on my door. And I really just loved how their tech transfer office was structured. And so now I'm a technology licensing manager at NYU.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I'm Carolyn Yago. I'm an associate professor here at Emory University. I am the director of a new graduate degree program in biomedical innovation and development for advanced therapeutics that we are standing up and launching in the fall. And my career path has been a little unique. So my research work has all been in stem cell engineering and cellular therapies, but I have worked in industry for about 8 years at a medical devices company. And during my time there with Kimberly-Clark and Halyard Health, during my time there, we filed several patents on new medical device technologies and new applications of that, worked really closely with our lawyers and groups that were overseeing those patents. Similar to Tariana, I wanted to come back to academia and had that opportunity about 7 years ago to come back to Georgia Tech, where I oversaw a research institution and research center, worked really closely with faculty there and supported them in some of their research and also invention development and patent work. So I helped them to connect with the Georgia Tech Tech Transfer Office, working on filing invention disclosures, helping them understand when they should be filing these invention disclosures and how to really engage with the Tech Transfer Office around patenting their inventions and then working on commercializing some of those technologies. So during my time at Georgia Tech, I think that we had something around over 15 or so patents filed through faculty, and there were at least 3 different startup companies that then licensed those patents from the university and started their own companies based off of those technologies. So really excited to kind of chat today and see if we can offer any glimmers of insight and suggestions for you around protecting your inventions and working with your technology transfer offices.
Awesome. Thank you both of you for that. So we'll start off with Dr. Tariana. Stuart, what about can you kind of give us a little bit of a background? We'll start with the tech transfer process from invention to patent. What can you help us understand about the basic workflow of the tech transfer process?
Yes, I'm gonna screen share and hopefully this will work because we did it during practicing. Okay, everyone can see the screen, right?
It looks good.
Okay. So before we even, and I just want to make a disclaimer, these are slides that NYU uses. So I definitely encourage you to contact your local tech transfer office. But pretty much what you're seeing right now should be the same for every university. But before I even get into this commercialization process, I just want to give a brief history on what tech transfer is. So there was a law that was passed in 1980 called the Bayh-Dole Law, and it was by 2 senators that were looking at universities that were saying, you know, universities are getting a lot of federally funded dollars to produce all this amazing research. There needs to be a way for the university to be able to commercialize whatever is being generated. And so in 1980, this law gave universities the right to own the inventions or own the technology that's produced, and then gives the university the right to commercialize it. So I always explain that whenever you're a new hire, faculty, postdoc, you know, PhD student, in your HR packet, there is at least like one tiny piece of paper that you're signing that says your local tech transfer office owns anything that you create. And it's the same thing at industry. When I joined IBM Research, I signed the exact same thing that if I happen to create an invention, it's IBM's research responsibility to commercialize it. So I just want to start with that, like that's the history of the tech transfer office. So if you're looking at the slide, everything begins with research. And I do want to empathize with everyone here. I know we're in a holding freeze right now with the grants. Everyone's struggling and hopefully we can get this resolved soon. So you have your research, it's federally funded. And then at that point, you can begin the commercialization process. And there's really 4 steps. There's the assessment of the technology, then there's the IP protection, and then there's the marketing of the technology, and then hopefully we can find a way to license it. And so let's start with the assessment. That begins with invention disclosure. I didn't need to do that. I'll leave that alone. That begins with invention disclosure. So find out through your tech transfer office where these invention disclosures are. Fill it out. You can never start too early with contacting our tech transfer office, but it can be too late. So always come to us super, super early. I tell all of my PIs, you can never send me enough invention disclosures. You can never come to me too early. It is not your job to determine if this is patentable. It is not your job to determine if this can be commercialized. This is our job. And the fact that more that you contact me and work with me, we can really kind of like fish out, like through your technology, what we can work with. So fill out your invention disclosure, and then our office will assess it. So we will assess it for patentability. Can we get a patent on this? And then also commercial attractiveness, okay? Like what industries might be interested in either obtaining some type of patent license or a know-how license. Or even this might be good for industry sponsored research. We can find out different companies might be interested in it. So then the next step is IP protection, and that's where you file a patent. Now, most offices, when I was at Georgia Tech and now at IBM, when I was at IBM and then now at NYU, we would always file a provisional patent application first. This is not a traditional application. This simply gives you a timestamp. So let's say that, I invented this eyewear today. I'm going to my tech transfer office. We're filing a provisional patent application. Anybody coming after me, that could be a potentially infringing on my patent. So that's why we always say you can always come to us early because we'll file provisional. That gives you a whole year for us to be able to then convert it to a non-provisional patent application, which is your traditional patent application. So just come to us super, super early because it can buy you time. It can buy you a year. IP protection can also be like managing copyrights as well. So then we file a patent, we find, commercial attractiveness, and that's where the marketing comes into play. And that's where my job is I cold email, I cold call people, basically like getting people on the phone, begging them to have a conversation with me to say, hey, like, I really think, this might be interesting. You could potentially license it. It goes into licensing. So that's where we negotiate a license agreement and hopefully it gets signed. And the university gets royalties. And everyone is super happy. And then you have a company or that then can further help commercialize this technology. And then going back to the revenue, that goes to the inventors, then goes back to the universities. Now the university has some more money and you can do more research. So this is kind of the cycle here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what can be licensed? Like I said, patents can be licensed, copyright, so like software, data models, tangible research property like cell lines, know-how, which a lot of people are surprised about. You can license your know-how. So if you're like an expert in one particular field where like no one knows how to do it but you can license your know-how. Trademarks, famous one is Gatorade from, I think it's University of Florida. They generated a lot of revenue from that. So that's something else that you can license. I'm just going a little bit deeper into patents. So patents are, it's the right to exclude others from making, using, or selling your claimed invention, and this is good for 20 years. Patents cover new, useful, non-obvious inventions. Now, prior art. So this is where I'm saying this is when it can be too late to contact your tech transfer office. Anything, so publications, going to conferences and speaking about your technology, your postdocs doing poster presentations. And I know this all has to be done. I was a PhD student. I had to do a poster presentation. You have to get published in order for students to graduate. You have to get published to reach tenure. Our tech transfer office understands that, and we will never, ever hinder you from not being able to publish anything. But before you go to a journal to submit your draft of your manuscript, contact your tech transfer office to see if there's something there. Because as we all know, it takes a lot of time for, for journals to review your manuscript. So within that time frame, we could be able to file a provisional patent application for you. So before your students go and do poster presentations, contact your tech transfer office there to see if it's something that we could potentially file. So like I said, we will always file a provisional patent application first, which we then have a year to determine if we're going to file a non-provisional patent application. And then from there, we'll decide if we're just going to file in the US only, or if we're going to file in other countries. So there might be a particular product that you have created that might be attractive to other European countries. And so then it might make sense to get patent protection in those countries. So that way we can license to countries in Europe, for an example. So I'm going to stop here. So with the overall, I'm just going to go back to the slide so you can see it again of the commercialization process.
That was really helpful. Dr. Stewart, do you think you could talk a little bit more about the evaluation process? So how do the tech transfer offices assess these inventions for patentability and the commercial potential?
Yeah, it's always a joke. It depends on the background of your licensing associate. So we have people that have like IP law firm backgrounds. So the first thing they always do look for patentability. And then you might have people that have like other experience, like, oh, let's look at the commercialization part first. For me personally, since I did come from a law firm, I look at patentability.
Okay.
So NYU is pretty unique in that we're very lucky in that we have our own patent group. So we have patent agents and patent attorneys that work with us. So when I get an invention disclosure, I always have my patent agent on the call with me. And she will do a prior art search to see that this truly is novel. And then we'll do an assessment really quickly to see if we can get some pretty robust claims within the patent application. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, if this is novel and non-obvious and useful, then I will do like a quick market search. And if I don't really see too much out there, then I'll go ahead and give the thumbs up for us to file a provisional patent application. And then from that point, I will really try to work closely with the researcher. Like I will provide like a list of companies and we'll just kind of talk about it to see if it really makes sense. I also tell researchers too, if you're going to conferences, see which companies are sponsoring the conference, because there might be some companies that I've never even heard of, but they're sponsoring your conference. So clearly this company is interested in what you guys are producing. And sometimes a lot of PIs like to talk a lot. And so companies might steal ideas based on your talks. So that's why I always say, like, come to us first. And I always ask researchers, like, kind of take like a snapshot of like on the packet, like who's sponsoring these and like provide that to me. And then I can like reach out, because it's going to be impossible for me to know every single company, every small industry. But if we can like work together, that can really help expedite the process of trying to get it licensed. Or again, I'm a little biased. I like industry sponsored research. I think it's a win-win for everyone. So again, like see which companies are involved and see if you get like an industry sponsored agreement with that company.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
One quick thing, and then we can go to the Q&A for this section. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean when you say non-obvious? I know a lot of investigators think, something is obvious, but can you talk a little bit more about novelty and non-obviousness?
Yeah, I'm just gonna do the really simplest example. So let's say someone put a patent on a car with 3 wheels. But you're like, oh, maybe 4 wheels would be better. That's kind of obvious, right? So that's kind of what we mean by non-obvious, of like no one in your particular field would think to do this.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question from the audience. Thanks for putting this in. How do you patent know-how? For example, computer models of regulatory processes have been established as a set of equations, but focusing that to a specific tissue organ, an application may have a unique publishable result. Can it also be patentable?
I'm gonna have to read this question for myself. That was a lot. Sorry. I think just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep another like very like simple like explanation of like, let's say there's a particular like method that only you know how to do. I had an example to where there was a PI that was working with a particular material to help remove some type of like chemical compound from a solution, but he had tweaked it so much and made it so efficient that no one else knew how to do it. So that particular know-how is something that we can license to a company.
Awesome, great. We have another one. What happens if you don't have enough supporting data after filing a provisional patent? How much supporting data do you need to move forward with a full patent?
So hopefully after a year, you have enough supporting data, but we understand if you don't, we can refile a provisional patent application again to buy you more time to produce the data. But and again, this is all with my office, your tech transfer office and your company might be completely different. Patents are very expensive. So we'd like to be able to file it the best way that we possibly can with the most data. Because once you go from provisional to non-provisional, it doesn't stop there. It then has to be examined by the US Patent Office by different patent examiners. And so you can go, it's called an office action. And so you have a whole slew of patent examiners, their primary job is to figure out how you cannot patent it. So we want to make sure that it is well written, so that way that whole office action process doesn't take a long time.
Thanks. I'll do one more kind of general question for you, Dr. Stewart. So what do you think, what are some kind of watch outs for researchers when they should be aware? You mentioned this a little bit, but collaborating with external institutes. So do you have any kind of big watch outs for this early process?
So this goes with startups, right? Particularly if you're working with another institution and you want to do a startup or even like internally. And there's so many stories to go into this. I always like to tell inventors early on, while everybody is still friendly, to figure out inventor contribution percentages. So if you have two people that are listed as inventors, and also let's go back to the definition of an inventor. So again, if I'm in my lab and I create eyewear, however, but I'm telling, Michelle, I need you, this is how you put together this eyewear. I need you to go and do that. Do all the experiments that you need to do. Michelle, that doesn't necessarily make you an inventor. That just makes you someone that worked in my lab, right? So an inventor is someone that equally contributed to the idea and the creation of something. And a patent is not the same as a publication. So a lot of people like to put names as inventors because in their mind, it's the same as a publication, and it's not. IP law, patent law is totally different. So before you come to our office, and on our invention disclosure, we have to list out all the inventors and their contribution percentages, because then that can determine the royalty structure on who gets what. So that's always the biggest pitfall that I see. I see this internally, and then I also see this externally when I see, two universities working together. This can be a big deal. And then particularly if there's a startup, that can be interesting if you're not establishing that up front. I think that's the biggest thing I want to talk about, because that's always, inventorship is always the key conflict that I see a lot.
Right. Dr. Yago, do you have any ads on that? I see you nodding along in agreement.
Yeah, I think you can't say this too much in my mind, is to really work on your communications, not just with your inventors that you're working with, right? If you're brainstorming ideas, if you're, all talking together, like, how do we do this better? What needs to get done? Those are areas in which you're probably all contributing to an invention, because you're intellectually lending your knowledge, know-how, and ideas together to come up with something. And you can't talk to your technology office too early, right? And be transparent in those early stages. I completely agree and really encourage you all to think about that. And determine, what those contributions were. I know when I worked at Georgia Tech, our technology transfer office always asked, like, what did you each contribute? What portion, not just the percentages, but what was it? Like, can you pinpoint something that you contributed from that intellectual standpoint that enabled this idea into an invention? Not just, I conducted this experiment and got these results.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. This is actually I think this is a good segue, but it looks like we have one more chat and then we can go into how we can effectively engage with our tech transfer office. It looks like from Jose, what about funding agencies and new inventions? Patent first and then approach agencies, or get funding first and then patent? It says money is needed to get data.
So funding is pretty much going to come from government institutions, so like NIH, DoD. It so getting funding from that is not contingent upon getting a patent. So, when you're writing a grant, they want to see the data, that you generated from your experiments. I think can help you saying that, you gave me X amount of dollars last year or the last 2 years, I was able to get a patent. And then my tech transfer office was able to do something. So then the government's be like, oh, okay, well, clearly you're doing something with the taxpayer dollars. They're more likely to give you that money. And I will say this, all tech transfer offices, we do a thing called iEdison reporting. And that's where we have to report to the government what the money is being used for. So Jose, if you go to your tech transfer office and you file a patent and we're able to commercialize it, we then report that back to the government that lists the grants that were supported by that. And your grants are also listed in the patent application too. So now there's like a track record of like, okay, like this is what your money has gone for. But for me personally, if I had a lot, I would always apply for government money first, not a patent, because you have to have that in order to survive.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I mean, most of the time when you're submitting grants, you can put in there a stipulation that there is data in your grant application that is proprietary and should be treated as such. So grants are handled in a proprietary way. Others can't take that information and share it. It's tricky, right? Because when you submit your grant, it does go to a review panel, other people see it. So you need to be clear about, is there data in here that is proprietary? How is that handled? But generally government funds are not, they don't claim any right or ownership to those inventions that are coming out of those grants. So you can file after you receive the money. If you're talking about other agencies that are not governmental, or maybe a sponsored research project, that's very different. And so you'll want to have potentially filed a patent on something before you go into other opportunities. And those are considered background IP that is then being further developed or utilized. And when you have more than one party coming in, they're each going to share, this is our background IP that we're bringing to this endeavor. Then you want to talk about what IP looks like moving forward. You work very closely with your tech transfer office and legal representation in order to work out those contracts. But there is a distinction around government funded research grants and other types of funding opportunities that you may pursue.
And just to add on to that, please be careful with receiving foundation money if you want to be on the track of entrepreneurship and getting patents. So a key example is you got to read the fine print. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, if you take that money, you can't do anything with it. You can't commercialize it. Our office can't do anything with it, because that type of money, they want it to be open to anybody. So, or in-kind donations, you may not be able to do anything. So I always take a step back and figure out, like, what do you want to do as a researcher? Do you want to be on the traditional academic track? Which there's nothing wrong with that. So if you just want to get grant money, you just want to publish, you just want to graduate students, and that's it, perfectly fine. However, if you want to be on the track of like entrepreneurship, you have to start thinking about all these things. Like, do I want to get a patent? Do I want to get licensing? Do I want to do a startup? And then that's when you need to really focus on, okay, like, where is this money coming from? What do I need to do in advance working with the tech transfer office? So I would like to say, like, you as the PI, like, what do you want to do? Like, what does your lab want to do? And there's no right or wrong answer, but it puts you in a certain mind frame, because people come to our office, and then that's another thing I look for on the invention disclosure, like, who is funding this? And if I see foundation money, I'm like, that's kind of a red flag for me. Like, there's probably not too much we can do.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So now I'll kind of go into the how we can effectively engage with our TTO. Dr. Yago, do you want to speak a little bit about how to build those relationships early and any tips for collaboration?
Yeah, I think we've touched on a lot of these things already, and I'll try to give a few examples. I just really love what Dr. Stewart said earlier, is that you can't reach out to your tech transfer office too early. So I want to build on what we were talking about there and what we were just talking about around, what do you want your laboratory to be and where are you wanting to go? If you think you might be interested in going an entrepreneurial route or going after a patent, then I would strongly encourage you to fill out your invention disclosure forms early and open those conversations. It's important that you go into those conversations open-minded and ready to listen to what your tech transfer office is going to tell you. They may have questions that you haven't thought about yet. They may have questions that you think aren't really that important, but there's a reason that they're asking those questions. So we start to think ahead around your patent strategy and how you want to be preparing for different things. And you should come with your own questions, right? This might be the first time you filed an invention disclosure. Maybe you're not familiar with what that means, what you can share and what you should not share at upcoming conferences or publications. So ask those questions. It's always a two-way street, and that communication is really important. A few watch outs, and I've seen this happen a lot of times, and I think I've also been in that boat when I was a graduate student. It's like you're getting ready to go for a conference and the conference is in like 2 days and you're like, wait, we need to file this invention disclosure because you're gonna, say these things. And you've then put this very hard time limit on turning around an invention disclosure. It's probably not going to be of the highest quality. You think your invention disclosure is actually going to give you some protection, and it really doesn't. It's an invention disclosure that's internal to your university. So you still don't want to share enabling information publicly, even if you've filed an invention disclosure internally. I mean, it's not the best practice. So that's why you want to be thinking early on about the information that you're sharing and what your research results are telling you. Hopefully that's helpful or gives some things to consider early on, because you want to give yourself that runway to write a nice invention disclosure and talk to your tech transfer office before you're going to the conference to present on something.
Yeah, thanks for that. You kind of mentioned being prepared to speak with a TTO. Any other things that, any resources or anything besides kind of the questions to have in hand when you come?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Tariana's point earlier, it's not your job to figure out if something is patentable, but it is really helpful if you can think about it a little bit before you go into that conversation and share. Like, I've been thinking about this data, this information, this new knowledge I've gained in this way, and I think it's an invention potentially for these reasons. This is what I'm seeing, and ask, like, can you help me figure that out? What research would you do? What else should I be thinking about? Your tech transfer office may have questions for you to go back in and think about or answer, and they're going to do their set of assessments as well. The points around potential companies that could be interested in this technology is really helpful. So try to learn and know your field. Don't only be looking at the academic research that's coming out. I had a conversation with a faculty member one time who was developing a new long-term release technology for a analgesic, right? And it was a really interesting technology. It could be patentable, but that faculty member was completely unaware that there were 2 products on the market that also offered similar capabilities. They just didn't know. So take some time to look at what is going on in the industry in addition to what is going on in the academic space around your technology. That'll just make you more informed, and you can have a more fruitful conversation with the tech transfer office, and you'll come with some appreciation and understanding of the market. Again, you're not expected to be an expert, but the more informed you can be, I think it can streamline some of those conversations and be really fruitful. Again, it's this balance of being informed with some information, sharing those opinions, and being open to what your IP attorney or your tech transfer officer is telling you or asking you.
That's great.
I
Dr.
wanted
Carter?
to get into a little bit more of what Caroline was saying. So you have to think about the timeline for industries that you want to license technology to. So I always try to listen to earnings calls for different companies, or get the transcripts. Because the earnings call, always at the end, it says where the company is going, what they're looking to do. So it's better to catch companies on the front end of where they're going to see if we can see if the university can implement their already developed early stage technology that we've laid the foundation for, that the company can then integrate into whatever product that they want to further design with their company. So a lot of times researchers will come in a little bit too late with what we were saying. There's products already on the line, already in the market. So we can take it a step further to see, okay, like, yes, this particular product is already there. How can we improve it? Or how can we create something new that the company may not be interested in? So that's just something to think about, that there can be a point where it's too late to approach a company to think about licensing the technology.
Yeah, and I don't want to discourage anyone just because you find something on the market that's similar to what you're trying to do. That still doesn't mean that what you have is not patentable or that it doesn't have value. That's where you really need to have those conversations. You want to be able to go to Tariana and say, hey, I have created this. This company has something kind of similar. It's trying to meet maybe the same market need, but mine is different or better or could be complementary. You don't need to know all of that yet, but that conversation can be really insightful and helpful to that patent strategy, can help develop relationships with those companies. And on the flip side, in one of my roles in industry, I was a technology scout, and we loved to have relationships with universities and see, what are the things that they're patenting? Do we want to look at that? Maybe we want a relationship with this researcher over at NYU because they're doing something similar and they have something patentable we could license. Companies are looking at that coming out of universities as potential relationships and potential license opportunities. And if you're not filing it, then the companies aren't going to know about it either. So I think it's important, not just from an entrepreneurial route, like maybe you want to have your own startup company, that's great, but maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, I don't want to, start a company and deal with all of that. There's still license opportunities. So think about that in the back of your mind. When I was at a company, we loved to go to conferences and talk to PIs and postdocs and researchers because they'll tell you all kinds of information.
Going to my point about filing before you go to a conference. Yes.
Right. So it's just worthwhile to give yourself some time to think about these avenues and make a informed decision. And your decision may still be, I don't want to do that. Like, I just want to publish and share what I've learned, and people are going to use what I've learned, and that's fine. But give yourself the opportunity to make an informed decision.
Thank you. It kind of mentioned this. I bet there'll be a lot of people who are interested in building their own startup on the call. So you mentioned, you have the opportunity to license or not, regardless. So how do they license their own invention so that they could establish a startup? Or if they don't want to establish a startup, what do they need to do to just kind of protect?
Yeah, I'll kind of kick off the conversation a bit, but I think Tariana could speak to it a little bit more. You want to always be working with your technology transfer office early, right? When you are going down the route of filing an invention or filing a patent. And I think once you decide you want to take that patent and do something with it, you can start the conversations with your technology transfer office about securing a license for your own technology. And you'll want to start a company. You need to have a plan for that. And then the company is going to, you yourself don't normally, license it. It's a company that licenses it. So you'll want to start a company, secure that license. I personally think that it's beneficial, if that's the route you're going, to talk to your own attorneys around, representing you in some of those conversations, so that you understand what's going to be best for your company. And about all the different routes. Some tech transfer offices are going to work really well with you and, try to make sure you have all of those opportunities in front of you. You just want to be knowledgeable about the process that you're going into. Universities tend to want their technologies to get out there, to be licensed, and to be utilized. And so they're very motivated to work with particularly their own faculty and students to try to help them get those things out into the world and realize the potential. But you could have something that's like, multiple people want to license it. And I'll let Tariana speak to how they approach, multiple interests in a technology, and carve out abilities to license in different ways.
Yeah, so there's different types of licensing strategies. Yes, startup is one. I like to give the hard truth when it comes to startups and licensing the technology from your lab to your startup. The biggest thing is money. How much money have you raised? Because I'm just going to go back again to the eyewear. So I created this eyewear in my lab. And so now I got a patent on it. Dr. Stewart, want to do my own startup. I'm going to call it Stewart, Incorporated or Inc. or LLC. I'm licensing the technology back to my lab. I'm now responsible for reimbursing back my tech transfer office, all the patent expenses. I'm now responsible for maintaining the patent. I'm now responsible for making sure that I get this eyewear into the market, because now I have to pay and again, your technology transfer might be different. There's now licensing fees that we have to pay your tech transfer office. There's certain milestone points that you have to reach. So I always encourage people to create a really great business plan, commercialization business plan. At NYU, we have our own startup manager, and like her job is just to really, really help researchers and students, define a clear commercialization plan. We also have different resources for faculty members to fundraise. So that's just, I always like, make sure you have a good chunk of change in your bank if you're going to do a startup.
Yeah.
And then and then that's one way to license it. And again, like I was saying before, there's like patent licensing and then, commercialization licensing. And again, this all going back, like, what do you want to do? Like, where is your mind? Like, do you want to be an entrepreneur, or like, there's just different like ways that you can approach this. So I would just have a conversation with yourself and figure out like, what do you really want to do? Do you want to be an entrepreneur, or do you want to have, or do you want to license technology purely for the sake of generating revenue, particularly for yourself or for your students or for your university, or do you want to be on the main track of like academia?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I wanted to reiterate, if these things are interesting to you,
Yeah.
or your students or your postdocs, take advantage of the other ecosystems within your university. You guys, most universities have some sort of entrepreneurial
Incubator, accelerator, or something. Yeah.
all of those things. There's resources out there to help you figure out, how do we do this? It's not just about the patent and the technology transfer part of it. It's about that full plan of, how do we get this to the market? What does a company look like? Do we want to go down that route or not? And there are opportunities before you license it to start thinking about, do we want to do this or not? There's really great things through NSF I-Core that you can do to try to understand what this looks like from a company perspective. You can do some early stage customer research to figure out, do you really have the potential of a viable product? And if you can do those things early before you start to try to raise money and before you put together your full plan and before you go through that licensing agreement, you're going to know more about the potential and you're going to understand what it takes. And it's a great opportunity for graduate students and postdocs to apply for these I-Core things and work with you as a faculty member. So I would just say, look broadly as well for those types of resources to help you learn and to flesh out these early stage concepts and see, are they a viable thing? Starting company is really hard. Most of them fail. So you should think really long and hard about what that means and if you want to go that route, and what you can do to set yourself up for potential success in learnings if you go down that route.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Good insights there. Along those lines, we had a question that was submitted ahead of time. If a faculty member's university is not interested in applying for a patent or in applying a patent for an invention, can the faculty member apply? So I know we kind of had some discussion about this early. I didn't know if you guys wanted to approach that.
Yeah, so if you submit your invention disclosure to your tech transfer office and the tech transfer office is like, okay, like I would have a conversation first because your tech transfer office may say no, but that doesn't mean that's no for right now. So there might be several reasons on why they're not filing a patent. And it could be for those reasons, it's not applying to IP law. So novel, non-obvious, and usefulness. So figure out why your tech transfer office is not applying for a patent. And then the flip side is if your tech transfer office did apply for the patent, and keep in mind, if it's federally funded, the rights go to the government. So if you get money from the NIH, and the NIH has the right to commercialize that IP. So then if your tech transfer office, NIH as an example, decides not to commercialize it or do anything with it, then you as the inventor have the right to petition to obtain the patent ownership or the title of the patent back to you, and then you're free to do with it what you wish.
Thank you. And then one more of a detailed question before we kind of get to the next section. When does a patent start to be effective? The date of your first submission or the date of getting approval by university?
So no, not by university. It's the patent cycle. So, right. So I say you file a provisional patent application, that takes a year. Then your office will decide to file a non-provisional patent application. I think I have a slide on it right here, actually. That's people are visual. I think we get this question a lot, the cycle. Right here. I'm going to screen share again. I know for me, I like to see things. So you have provisional, non-provisional, and then it can, after the date of submission, it can be about 3 to, and this is generous, 3 to 4 years of actually having the patent being issued. And that's where you get like, it's not, the patent office actually does a really good job of like sending like your patent a nice, like pretty like envelope and, folder. So from the start of submitting the invention disclosure to obtaining a patent can be a 3 to 5 year process.
Yeah, and I think that the question is, when does your 20 years start?
Oh, I'm sorry. From the date of issuance. Sorry. Yeah.
And maybe it would be helpful to, and I'm going to ask you, Tariana, because I forget, the benefit of filing a provisional, is that still because it gives you a priority date, even though it'll take 5 years maybe for the patent to get issued, but your provisional gives you a priority date of that first to file versus the change of first to invent. Does that make sense?
Yes. But I'm also going to say this is a cost issue too.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to go back to researchers coming 24 hours or 48 hours to us saying, hey, we're about to have a public disclosure. It costs about anywhere between $1,200 and $1,500 to file a provisional patent application versus filing a non-provisional that can be anywhere to $15,000 to $30,000 from start to finish, and that's including, the office action, because it costs money to go back and forth with the USPTO office, and you got to pay the lawyers, right? Who are like, anywhere between $380 and $500 an hour. So all those costs. So that's why we typically file a provisional first, and also just to get that date stamp.
Thanks for that. So now we'll kind of go to our last portion of the coffee chat, overcoming common challenges. So you guys have been mentioning these throughout. What about kind of working around funding and time constraints? So are there any particular ways or suggestions that you have that the TTOs can support the faculty among these deadlines? I might know a little bit of what you're going to say, but maybe kind of reiterate it for those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to that early conversation and mindset. And so, we've all been in situations where somebody asks you for a really tight turnaround because they have a deadline and you are caught off guard and you're like, wait, I had no idea that you needed me to run that experiment, 5 weeks ago so that you could have this data. And now I'm trying to rush and get that done. It's the same thing for your tech transfer office. So if you know you have a grant deadline, or if you always go to a particular conference every year, be prepared to talk to your tech transfer office well before those deadlines so that they can help you know what you should or should not present, know what you should or should not submit, work with you to file that provisional patent. And Tariana, I would ask for your expertise here. Even if you file that provisional patent, you may still not want to present certain information about your potential invention. And that tech transfer office can help you with those things. So I know it's hard to always be planning ahead for these conversations, but I would just really, if you take anything away from today's webinar and conversation, it should be, don't be afraid to reach out to them at any time and start those conversations, because you don't know what you don't know. They don't know what you're currently working on and doing, and you can start to have those relationships. And maybe your first time around, it doesn't go anywhere. That's fine. You at least know the name of the person and how to talk to them and how to reach them. And the next time around, you'll be more prepared. So I'll stop with that one.
No, it's spot on. And for me personally, I will never tell an inventor not to submit a grant, not to submit a paper for publication, because that's how you survive. And again, I'm just going back to my original comment of thinking about what type of research do you want to be? Is it pure academia, or is it entrepreneur? Is it trying to generate licensing revenue? Just have that conversation, just talk to us super early.
And as far as timelines, honestly, earlier the better, right? But let's just say, what kind of timeline does it take? Is it like months, or they think like, oh, I have a conference and I'm applying for this abstract that's 6 months away. Like what's a timeline or a good timeline if they do have something coming up where they think, oh, this might be? Is it as soon as they figure it out in the lab, or?
So I always say, right when you're ready to draft a manuscript for publication, right? Because at that point, you should have generated enough data that you think this is a good thing. And so I say, generate your manuscript, right? Put all the figures together, everything like that. And then a lot of times people just submit their manuscript to our office as part of along with their invention disclosure. So I would say that is when you should contact your tech transfer office, with the assumption, if we do file a provisional, that within the next 6 to 8 months, you're going to have more data to build upon. So that's when you should be coming to your tech transfer office.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, yes, absolutely for manuscripts, but secondarily for your conferences, you're going to be sharing data. and sharing what you've learned. Abstracts are a lot less comprehensive than a manuscript, and they may not have enough detail for your tech transfer office to understand what you're doing and if they should file. But I don't see a problem in reaching out to them as you're preparing an abstract submission for a conference. If you know that in 6 months you'll be going to that conference and you'll have a poster or maybe a podium talk, and it's before you've shored everything up in a manuscript. Different labs do things differently. Sometimes you don't submit anything until you're ready with your manuscript and then you go to your conferences, but sometimes you're presenting really early stage data, early stage learning before you have that manuscript ready.
Thank you.
And that is considered a public disclosure.
Yeah.
If you're at a conference and you're telling the public about stuff.
That's important. Thank you. We'll try to get in one more question before we have to say goodbye. This has been super helpful. Any tips for managing potential conflicts of interest, especially for those interested in venturing into the startup world?
Contact your conflict of interest office. Every university has one. So I would contact them. And that can be anywhere for some professors like to leave to go do consulting work, right, for different companies. So you have to contact your conflict of interest office. So just contact them.
Thank you. Any other, let's see, I'm going to check the chat. It doesn't look like we have any additional chats. Thanks, BK, for the notes in the chat to those. Reading those. And I think we covered the other ones. Any final thoughts from each of the speakers?
No, this is great. I hope this is helpful, and just reach out to your tech transfer office and just have a meeting with somebody.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And again, like I said, this was our first venture into the TTO. So I learned a lot, and I hope those on the call did. And again, we can't thank Dr. Stewart and Dr. Yago enough for your time. We truly appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a good day. If you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.